Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart lead writer Sam Maggs has accused her former employer of erasing her work after a GDC talk by Insomniac lead designer Mark Stewart. Now, I know this is a story that cropped up earlier in the week, but I think it is an important theme around game developers not getting proper credit for games that they worked on. After working on Rift Apart for a year and a half as a lead, Maggs was only credited under special thanks, but it was a report on IGN about Stewart's GDC talk that really brought her frustrations forward. GDC is short for the Game Developers Conference, where game devs from across the industry get together to share lessons about game making with one another. In Stewart's talk titled Lombak's Lessons, a Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart design postmortem, Stewart recaps the evolution of the franchise's newest heroine, Rivet, and specifically outlines a number of issues they had trying to make the strong female character in their game feel like, quote, inspirational representation and not just a bonus mechanic, end quote. In the game Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, Rivet is an alternate dimension version of Ratchet and plays as a complete equal with the same tools and abilities, and even makes up about 50% of the playtime. Her surprise reveal was pretty well received during Insomniac's early marketing and trailers for the game and fits in well with the Ratchet and Clank universe. But in Stewart's GDC talk, he describes a different version of Rivet that could have been. Initial concepts for the character had her painted as a nature-loving beast tamer with her own set of limited abilities. However, Stewart explains, we realized the nature-loving woman was a trope. Think Ferngully, Pocahontas, or Crystal from Star Fox. Moreover, constraining the theme of her weaponry stifled the creativity the franchise was known for. Ratchet's weapons can shift, cut, bomb, and transmute. Making her set exclusively nature-based put unnecessary constraints on us. In addition, before the writing team landed on Rivet, other names that were considered for the character were Ratchet, and Gadget. As Stewart notes in his talk, the first name Ratchet was too diminutive, reducing the character to a gender-swapped version of Ratchet. The second name, Ratchet, suffers from some of the same problem, but was also just confusing. And lastly, Gadget didn't sit right with the team since it made them think too much of other characters from the 80s. Now, that's all well and good. In the end, we got a cool new character in the Ratchet and Clank franchise. However, it seems Stewart's recap of Rivet's development either intentionally or accidentally left out Sam Maggs' contributions or minimized the efforts it took to make Rivet more than just a Ratchet with a bow on her head. Lead writer on the game, Sam Maggs, took to Twitter saying, seems like Mark's GDC talk makes it sound like a bunch of this stuff sprung up from nowhere. I was one of like 4 people in the room for most of Rivet's development. I was the one who said, we can't call her Ratchet. Gadget and Rivet were me. Sucks to have my work erased. This total erasure would make me feel less furious if I didn't have the memories of sobbing in offices for hours after fighting tooth and nail to stop Rivet from being cut from the game entirely burned into my brain. Maggs also makes note of a confrontation where she and the game's creative director were yelling because there was a disagreement over whether or not Rivet should have boobs and makeup. To add context to the situation, in a separate thread, Maggs started breaking down how Rivet's name came to be, highlighting a list of qualifiers she made that helped her collect names from multiple developers at Insomniac. And here is where things get a little complicated. Another developer at Insomniac, a gameplay programmer named Laura Adams, pointed out that while Maggs was spotlighting how she was being left out of the conversation around Rivet's development, she was also failing to name the person who originally suggested Rivet's name. Maggs responded and pointed to another tweet where she had mentioned before that the development of Rivet had been a team effort and she wasn't as concerned with the name as much as she was concerned with the overall erasure of her contributions to the character entirely. After a quick amicable back and forth, it was revealed that a programmer named David Kim initially suggested the name Rivet, which made the list, and that was later signed off on by Maggs. So while that part, even though corrected by Maggs, may still feel a little hypocritical to some, ultimately, who named Rivet again, it just isn't really the point of this conversation. What's happening here is a larger issue around developers contributing large amounts of time and effort on a particular game, only not to get credit. There's been a number of devs over the years who have reported this very same thing happening to them. In this case, there's obviously a broader contribution here, and Sam Maggs, the lead writer on Rift Apart, didn't even receive a writing credit. A former coworker and senior technical artist, Sol Brennan, vouched for Maggs, tweeting, Rivet would have still been Ratchet without Sam. Sam made Rivet. It wasn't someone, it was Sam. It's not my story to tell, but what they did to Sam forced me to give my resignation the day after, and I made sure to tell them in my exit interview. As far as I can tell, after a quick glance at the Rift Apart credits, I didn't see any writing credits at all, so they may all very well be under the special thanks section, which, you know, is kind of a weird place for them. I know there's credits on IMDb where, you know, you can see that Sam Maggs isn't credited, but if you've played that game, you finished that game, and you know where the writing credits are, feel free to let me know in the comments if I just missed it. The wider conversation here is that even with the studio is widely regarded as Insomniac, and with the industry overall, there are still a lot of issues around proper crediting. Getting credit for shipping a game is particularly important in the industry because having 1 to 3 games shipped is a pretty standard requirement for a lot of positions across all the different fields at most studios. Compounding the issue is a lot of studios have weird conditions around crediting. Specifically, if you aren't around when the game ships, you don't get a credit. This was certainly the case for Maggs, who left Insomniac in 2020, as well as for another coworker who worked on Rivet as a character modeler. Xavier Coelho Colstani tweeted, "Can confirm, as one of the people on the team who also got a special thanks in the credits, even though I was doing lead work on the project for a year." Coelho Colstani continued, "I'm proud of the work I did on Ratchet and Clank, but it was one of the most deeply frustrating experiences of my career." The fact that people like Sam had all their involvement erased in favor of keeping the narrative that Insomniac is a friendly and supportive studio makes my blood boil. As of the time of this recording, Insomniac has yet to respond to criticisms and claims surrounding the situation, and we may not see one anytime soon, if at all. On one hand, they could respond by patching updated credits into the game, but it would be much simpler for the studio to just lay low and then quietly change their policies around crediting going forward, if they decide those policies should change at all. One motivating factor to withhold credits could be to keep developers from leaving when development on a game gets hard or they're experiencing crunch. Another, which is alluded to in the case of Rift Apart, is to keep things quiet if there is some sort of falling out or turmoil leading to departures. The issue around crediting in the games industry have been around for a while, and it gets increasingly problematic when you consider the volatile turnover rate in games combined with a large freelance or contract-based labor force. Not to mention, there are a lot of roles that are pre-production heavy, like with the case of writing or concept art. Studios often will lay teams off when they aren't needed and then try to staff up again when production starts up on the next project. Insomniac Games has a near sterling reputation for making great games, but also for being a great place to work. So it's extremely disheartening to see this type of discussion and this type of discourse kind of spring up around the studio. It's my hope that they actually do have some kind of official response to this, or at very least correct their policies around crediting, so that maybe the industry, you know, at large can take note and then also begin to move forward. It seems really sucky for developers to spend a year, or even less than that, working on a game or doing something specific that makes it into the shipped product, and then they don't even get to claim credit for it on their resume or whatever. Anyways, that's it for today. Thanks for watching, everyone. Be sure to share your thoughts in the comments below about the situation and what you think about crediting and game developers and all this. Anyways, thanks for watching again, and we'll catch you in the next video right here on Inside Gaming.